Welcome to Study Loop.
Hello, everyone. I hope all is well. And today I will be helping you with the 72nd problem of the Chapter 18 problem set. So basically, this is broken down into 4 parts. So part A says, explain how such a molecular clock could be refined to infer time for the evolution of prokaryotes. So basically, what you want to do is evaluate. So when you're approaching this type of question, say on the AP test, what you really want to do is show that you're actually evaluating and that you're not just stating facts. So, for example, so for me, it says this can be calculated because there are only 20 amino acids and protein to like a to attain a certain protein, and that then the protein is made from DNA. So for me, the connection was 20 amino acids, and then that forms a protein, right? And then these amino acids come from DNA. So for me personally, I can see how it can be sequenced very easily. So that's my evaluation, that you can easily do it because there's only a certain amount of amino acids to create protein. So if you have 20 proteins to work with that are all different, then you know that the amino acid sequences are different, and then you can compare them between them. All right, so that brings us to B. So B is a little different. So what you have to do is there's a connect section. So it's connecting the ideas. So what it asks is, it says connect the time of origin of life inferred from this diagram with the age of the oldest fossil and with the oldest age of the stromatolites and the age of the oldest exposed rock to show how evidence from different scientific disciplines provides concept of. So you have the two answers of 4.25 billion, and then you have 3.5 billion. And so what I did for this one is that with the very many disciplines, it shows how everything progressed and where everything originated from. So if you're looking at geology, you have the various different layers, and then they can tell you about the rocks and why the rocks were there, what they're made up of, and the chemistry and the biochem behind it, and the importance of it. And then you have the biology, which is more like the nature aspect of it. Then you have the math section, which is really helpful because it can do relative dating, etc., which we'll get into later. And then you have the evaluate section, right? So what you want to do is you really want to evaluate, and you want to give a definite one, which says evaluate the legitimacy of claims drawn from these different disciplines regarding the origin of life. So what I always like to point out is you're limited. So my evaluation is that it is limited. You're limited because you have only a certain amount of tools, right? There's only a small amount of tools to work with, and then of those tools, you only have a small sample. So you have a small sample of those old rocks or old fossils that you're trying to date, etc., and you're trying to figure it out. So really, there was this big of a picture, but present day, we can really only see that big of a picture. And the best way I like to describe this is like the universe. For example, like if you're looking from your perspective of a telescope and say this was the whole entire universe, we're maybe seeing that much of it, right? And that's basically what we're trying to see within the past. So now, and again, it's only a guesstimate and an estimate of what you can actually do. So this leads us to part C. So part C says justify. So this is a justification, right? It says justify the relationship between the number of each isotope at any time and the number of each at the time that the molten rock solidified. So how I like to say, or what I would personally like to do, so you have the 87 strontium, and then you have the 86. Oh, that's the 87. Yes, and then you have the 87 rubidium. So what I like to personally do is I like to draw the connection between the two. So these were very present in the beginning. So it all began with certain types of these isotopes, how they are tracing it back to these two. So there's some type of derivation between these two that can really show you how old something is based upon the amount that you have. So then this leads us to D. So D is essentially saying, so they give us a bunch of values of what to do, but it's saying analyze these data points to obtain the age of formation of these rocks, right? So you have a lot of these points, and what they're really doing is they're comparing the slopes of the two, and it's important to compare the slopes because what you would which what you would find out is you have different points, and if they're at separate slopes and one has a different rate of the other, you could really relatively date the difference between the slopes because the rate of the change over time is important because then it shows you what is going faster than the other, how are the isotopes changing over time, and the way that the isotopes change will give them and will give them a clue as to what was going on in the atmosphere, what kind of chemicals were out, what kind of things would um, create that kind of chemical reaction. So I hope you found this helpful, and I hope you have a great day.